Brett teaches Raspberry Pi.
Brett teaches Raspberry Pi.
Brett.
Tech is cool. T-minus 5 seconds.
Brett teaches Raspberry Pi.
Hello everybody, my name is Brett Beardall.
And I'm Lexi, and we're here to talk to you today about Raspberry Pi.
Now you guys should have been receiving your kits. Over here we're going to talk about each of these Raspberry Pi pieces and how they all come together so that we can do some programming later on today and use the kit that we've given you.
Yes, so the first and most important part is our Raspberry Pi right here. So this is just a single board computer, but we also have some other features in this kit. Can you tell us a little bit more about what these components are, Brett?
Absolutely, thanks Lexi. So the first thing you're going to get here is the Sense. Okay, this is the Sense hat. We're going to use this later today in our programming, and it has a lot of cool key features associated with it. The first thing here you'll notice is this gigantic RGB LED screen here. Okay, it's multicolored. We're going to do all kinds of fun stuff later in programming that we can put all kinds of colors and do fun stuff with it. So stick around and we're going to do that. The second part, it also has some cool features like temperature, barometer, all kinds of stuff that we're also going to access and give you tips on how to use it.
And this even looks like a little joystick as
yes,
well.
Good eye. Yes, this is a little joystick right here in the corner. This allows us to capture movement from the user and potentially make a little game, which we're definitely going to do a little later, so stick around.
It's adorable.
The other thing we're going to have here, this is a hammer header. So typically these kits come with a soldering kit possibility that you could put on. We're not going to expect you guys to solder these things together, so we provided a kit for you to be able to hammer this thing on. Now the kit comes with two different versions here. The first one is a full male version. The second one here is a female version. If you notice the holes on the bottom here. The one we do want to use, in fact, is the male version. So we're going to go ahead and take this female version and we're going to set it to the side because we're not going to use it. We're going to use this version right here.
Another time.
So to throw this on to the Raspberry Pi itself, we're going to have to use a jig. And so I'll let Lexi talk about the jig over there.
Yeah, so these jigs right here are just really important pieces to help you actually hammer the Sense hat onto the Raspberry Pi. And you'll notice there's a white film here. Just make sure you remove that because it is kind of a very meticulous fit. So you want to make sure you take that film off, and then we have other components as well right here.
Yeah, so this is a USB extender here. So on our Raspberry Pi itself, we can't plug these larger USB into here. So we've got a little, the smaller micro USB here that we're going to plug into this kit and then allow us to extend to add a mouse and a keyboard, which is going to allow us to control the Raspberry Pi itself.
Awesome.
So super helpful there. The other thing we have here is a really tiny micro SD card that's going to allow us to put the operating system on there and let the Raspberry Pi run so that we can do our coding in it. This little piece here is a USB port that you can plug into your computer. It also has a little slot in the top of this that we're going to put that micro SD card into so that our computer can actually read it and put the operating system on it itself. Okay,
awesome.
So stick around with that and we're going to show you how to use that later. And then we got some miscellaneous components for the jig, and we got a power supply here to power the whole thing because we need power to show the cool colors. And then lastly, an HDMI cable over here so that we can plug it up to this monitor and show you all the cool stuff that's going on.
And you are going to need your own hammer as well, because when they say hammerhead, they mean hammerhead.
We're going to hammer it.
Yeah, so I think it's time to show us how to put the Sense hat on and use our hammerhead. I'm ready.
Me too.
You too?
Yes, let's do it. As you can see, we've changed locations. We're now in the lab.
Whoa!
Right?
So cool in here. Although I'm thinking maybe we don't need the safety equipment.
Yeah, this stuff's pretty safe. Let's get rid of it.
How come you got the lab coat?
I don't know.
I guess I
Okay.
got the hammer.
She's got the hammer, everybody. Okay, we're going to move into our actual putting our hammer header on our kit today. So obviously we got our parts out here we're going to need our Raspberry Pi. We need the actual hammer header itself. We need the jig here that you talked about last time, and our screws and nuts that we're going to put on there.
All right, so what's the first step?
So the first step is to get our Raspberry Pi on the first piece of the jig, and this one is the first piece of the jig that you're going to need. It's the one that's got the little slot there at the bottom. And so this is going to be where the hammer header itself sits down inside of it so that we can hammer it on. So first thing is we're going to take these little screws, and you want to make sure to push it through the two holes there at the bottom on both sides of this hammer header jig. Okay, so they're just like that, and we're going to set it here on the table just so that it doesn't fall out while we're putting the rest of it together. Okay, and then the next step is to take our actual Raspberry Pi itself, and we're going to slide it down onto those screws and those 2 holes. And make sure you do the side with the jig itself, or the hammer header holes there at the top, so that we can get the jig on it.
And then we're going to get a little nuts, right?
Yes, we're going to take these little tiny nuts, make sure you don't lose those, and we're going to screw those down on each one of those posts all the way down until it pushes the Raspberry Pi into the bottom one a little bit. You don't want to over tighten it, just do like finger tight so that it holds it on there. I'll let you do the right one and I'll do the left one. Okay, so you're just going to continue to rotate that down until it touches your Raspberry Pi board. And once it gets down there, just keep it a little finger tight. You want to make sure that Raspberry Pi is just held against the bottom of that jig. Okay, so our next part, if you notice on the back side of this Pi, the screws protrude out a little bit. This is perfect for this next piece of the jig here, where we're going to set those screws down inside there so that it sits on it. So we're going to go ahead and set that right on there so it just kind of falls in place. Okay?
Hammer time yet?
Almost. Get
Okay.
ready. We're going to grab our hammer header here now, and you notice the hammer header has 2 sides, a longer and a shorter side. We want to mess with the shorter side on this one. We're going to set it right down in those holes on that Raspberry Pi and let it kind of slide in there temporarily. And so it's ready to be hammered on. That last part, if you want to take that little piece of jig there and you're going to slide that down on top of the screws so that it sits right on top of that hammer header.
Perfect.
And guess what time it is?
Hammer time!
It is! It's hammer time. Yes. So we're going to lightly tap this jig down to push the hammer header itself down to the Raspberry Pi. If we look at the other side here, you can see the little black piece from the hammer header. We're going to push that down until it touches the Raspberry Pi board itself. So
don't violently smash the computer with a hammer.
Be gentle. We don't want to. It is electronics. I don't know about you, but I don't usually hit them with hammers, but we're going to be really gentle with this one and get it down and make it look good.
All right.
Lexi's going to go ahead and tap this down, and remember, you're making sure that that black part there reaches the Pi board itself. So go ahead and give it some light taps and let's see what it does. Excellent.
Our Raz Pi, it's alive!
It sure is. Wait a minute, where'd you get that lab coat?
I don't know. This lab is weird.
It sure is. Anyway, we've got our Raspberry Pi ready now. If you notice that the hammer header has reached the Raspberry Pi board itself, we're all set up and good to go. So we're going to go ahead and move into the next part of this, which is to go ahead and install the actual Raspberry Pi operating system itself. You ready to do it?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, let's head over and get it done.